Well, good morning and welcome to another episode of PharSide Pholios 2022 edition. We are been in a month-long celebration of Read a New Book Month for the month of December with a special series of author interviews along with daily posts and quips and quotes and all the great stuff that we do here on the far side. And today's special guest is none other than Avery Carter. She is an independent LGBTQIA plus science fiction and fantasy writer and author of the Moon Trilogy. Their greatest accomplishment, aside from publishing a few good books, and they are good books, is winning a citywide compliment duel or teaching one of their dogs the commands, excuse me. They probably proclaim that they are the coolest person you know before quickly disproving it by talking too much about Pokemon or how amazing their wife is. They spend their days cosplaying as an ESL teacher in South Korea and their nights writing about the weird and wonderful things that can be found in everyday life. Welcome to the far side, Avery.
Hi.
All right. So we are talking about one of your, I guess, latest and greatest, or one of your early works, The Ghost and the Real Girl.
Mm-hmm.
The Ghost and the Real Girl. And it kicks off with this amazing quote. It's like, there was never a good night to rob a grave, but the night of a full moon was certainly the worst. What response did you want to invoke in the reader from that opening line?
I know, it's a killer opening line, right? So actually the entire idea for the book and just the entire story itself came about because that line got stuck in my head. Usually what happens is a single line of description or dialogue or something gets stuck in my head. So that particular line was just like, boom, in my head. I had to write it down. For the feelings, I wanted it to be a little eerie, a little spooky, and to really just set an atmosphere and an atmospheric tone for the story upcoming.
And it definitely did that because that part of that first half of that sentence, that rob a grave, and it's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, okay, what is going on? It definitely triggers that what is going on here type thing. So of all the jobs that a character could possibly have, um, what would lead this girl to become a grave robber? What kind of circumstances led to that kind of career choice or path um, for our main character?
Uh, Great question. So Sarah, the main character, she is not from the city where the book takes place. She's actually from an area called the Outer Farms, which are, as you might have guessed by the name, the farms outside of the city, kind of far away from the city. And she follows her little brother in because he gets into a doctor program. And while there, she's trying to figure out how she's going to make a living. And the thing is that hospitals and like art studios and everything like that, they always need things for gross anatomy classes. Not gross like ew gross, but gross like total anatomy, right? So they always need things for anatomy classes. They need things for drawings. So she just kind of fell into that. I don't want to say naturally because it's kind of hard to naturally fall into that role, but that's the role that she ended up taking on. She was like, I know dirt. I used to be a farmer. I know dirt. I want to help out my little brother and I want to make some money while I'm doing it. So robbing graves.
So and so then that kind of ties into this theme of, class that you
Mhm.
bring up in that appears early on in the book. Those distinctions, um, distinguishing marks like by, clothing type,
Mhm.
um, by, I guess, location,
Mhm.
um, as far as, someone being from Himes versus someone being, from another part. How does that, that kind of notion of class impact this relationship that our real girl Sarah has with the ghost that she encounters as a result of her job?
Um, so I very intentionally built class structures into the book. A lot of book series that I grew up loving, grew up reading a lot, and ones that I enjoy now also have very intentional class structures built into them. The most notable one that I can think of off the top of my head is Brandon Sanderson and his idea of light eyes versus dark eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and how like the highest dark eyes is still less than the lowest light eyes. Um, so I wanted to build in this idea of class because I know that's one of the best ways to get some really good solid world building in is social classes, religion, and food. Thank you, N.K. Jemisin, for your wonderful world building masterclass on that. Um, but the city itself, Caelum, if I have the map here, it's built in a circle around a spire in the middle. The spire is made of crystal and it gets hit with light at different times of the day. So each section of the city is named after a different season based on how much light they get. So Clem, Lady Clementine de Quille, our ghost, she's from Astas, which is the summer area. It's up here in the north. So they're going to get hit with light most of the day. What's called spire light, which is when the sunlight reflects through the spire and creates this beautiful riot of color splashing across the city. They get hit with it most of the day. And Sarah lives down here in Himes, which is the winter district. And they only get the spire light a few times a day. Sarah's little brother is over in Vers. I always forget how to pronounce it. Vers or Vers, however you choose to pronounce it. Over here, which is the spring section, they have the merchant quarters, the hospitals, and the universities are over there. And then the craftspeople are all down in Orums, which is the autumn district. So a lot of the initial conflict between Clem and Sarah comes from the fact that Sarah lives in Himes and Clem is not from there and she has no idea what to expect. But she's following this person from Himes and she can't control it and she's really upset about it.
And you see that, the reader picks up on that in her, like the tone of voice and what Clem says to her, or like looks, what appears as looks of disgust,
Mhm.
you know.
She's just like, "You live here?"
Yes.
And Sarah's like, "Yeah? Where else am I supposed to live?"
So like definitely the difference between Sarah's like what like one room, no like running water or anything. She just splashes some water on her face, or dump some water to, clean
dumps
off the
water,
kind of the night
dumps
work,
water over her head and just gets
like a
going.
whole bucket,
Yep.
and we're gonna go out. And so you get that interaction between someone who's like who's come from, wealth, place of wealth, but she's not even Clem is not in a living state, okay?
No, she's not.
She's not. But she's showing all of this disgust and disdain for for someone who's living, right?
I mean, spoiler, 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 spoiler,
Well,
spoiler.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So for our live viewers and those who are catching us for the replay, we haven't totally spoiled it. We just kind of like you were setting it. We're just setting you up. We're setting you up.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
Setting you up. Okay. So early on we see, Sarah's, this grave robber, and she recovers, this locket. Um, and but she herself has, a form of jewelry that gives her access to various gates, access or entry to various gates or um, parts of the city. What are the limits or boundaries that Sarah and Clem have that prevent their ability or can prevent their ability to accomplish what they want to do?
So Clem's bound to Sarah. She can't move more than 5 paces away from her. This is established very early on in the book that where Sarah goes, Clem goes. Like, they're stuck together. And Sarah, since she's a resident of Himes, she has, and like everybody in the city, they have an identification tablet that they use as like, this is where I live. Because Caelum itself is still holding over things from plague times.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentioned a couple times in early chapters. Blue pox was the big thing. And Sarah mentions like pox graveyards, and she thinks that Clem might have died from that. And because of that, Caelum itself is still kind of under a little bit of military law. So there are still things like, what is the word? Curfews. There are still curfews. You have to be back in your district at a certain time. And if you're not there, then, you're going to be in big trouble. And there are regulations making sure that, like, the people that are in Himes stick to the winter roads, and that the people that are in Veers stick to the spring roads, and Astas gets the summer roads, and Arams gets the fall roads, the autumn roads. But in chapter 2, we find out that Sarah can kind of like sneak her way in on the March Road because it's early enough that, no one's gonna pay attention or care that she's a resident of Himes sneaking in on the March Road. And she uses the March Road quite often to go in and out of the city, strangely enough, just because it's nicer than the winter roads. Like, it's not too nice, it's not too fancy, but it's nicer. There's less stuff to trip on. The stones are actually like cemented in place as opposed to the winter roads, which are kind of decrepit and not that great. But yeah, she usually just moves around the city in order to get clients for her business, since she is a freelancer, I guess, if you want to call it that. She is a freelancer.
Yeah, great way to put it.
Yeah. And to, make sure that her brother is eating and that he's doing all right and taking care of himself, because he's 10, training to be a doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how, with, given the boundaries, of class, that's, you've got the military presence, you've got, kind of the tags that denote your station and position, in life. How will that limited access or that access influence, their movement, throughout the story? Or
It kind of,
does it shift and change? Will their access or ability to move about and, do all of the different things they need to do to figure out, okay, how can I, you know, untie myself, you know, or break this thing connection um,
mhm.
happen?
There's a point about midway through the book when they're trying to figure out where they can find information about whatever this is.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to go to the library, but Sarah doesn't have enough money because getting into the library costs money. You have to pay a day pass in order to get into the public library, and she's not able to do that. So there's this very real moment between them where Sarah's like, we're going to need more than a day in the library. And Clem's just watching her count out the money. And she's so surprised. She's like, you have 5 wheels. That's all you have. And a wheel is the largest denomination of money. And having 5 wheels is basically like having $50. Or it's like you have $50 and a dream, and you have to make this last until your next job. I have no idea how you're going to do that.
Whew. Look, I mean, inflation. look, right? Like, just think of gas in our present time.
Yeah.
you know, and that speaks to access. To things like their different pockets. I'm in the DMV, DC metropolitan area, so you definitely see kind of the disparities where there are like food deserts, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where they're not the, where there isn't the access to, grocery stores where there's,
Yeah.
convenience store on, every corner, but you don't have the grocery store with the fresh, vegetables and fresh fruit. So, the
Yeah.
struggle to make those decisions as to, okay, I've got this much money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but I need this access, but I only have like the 5
Yeah.
wheels, so that's
Yeah.
that's a real thing that readers you know can relate or connect to or think about or reflect on. um and this also, you see um the relationship between Clementine and Sarah grow throughout the story, where it's like initially you see these two unlikely, you know, this unlikely coming together of death and life,
Mm-hmm.
and not even wanting to share presence, to like having empathy and
Mm-hmm.
concern, and kind of working together. So does that continue throughout, the novel or throughout the story? And how will their, relationship evolve?
So I originally got my start writing fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that knows different fan fiction tropes will be able to recognize them in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can pick out like, aha, here is they're stuck together. Here is the italicized O. Like they can pick out the little fan fiction tropes as it
Mm-hmm.
goes. But the whole idea of unlikely pairing to something more is one that I hold it very close to me. I'm just like, I like this. This is mine. I like it very much. So Clem and Sarah definitely go from butting heads very much. And part of that is just from their personalities. At the beginning, Clem is very buttoned up, quite literally buttoned up.
Mhm.
Like she's got high neck
Mhm.
dress, like very long sleeves. She keeps her hands in front of her perfectly. Like she's quite literally very buttoned up. And then as the story goes on, she experiences more of the world. And we learn that she didn't have a chance to experience that when she was alive
Mhm.
at all. She was kind of, at the risk of spoiling too much, she was kept away from
Mhm.
most living things for a reason. But as she experiences more of the world and as she starts to form that very human connection with Sarah, as like a, you are human, you're doing your best, I'm human, I'm also doing my best, even though you are alive and I am dead, we're both just trying to do what we can. That connection there.
Mhm.
And the whole thing where even after it becomes evident that like Sarah isn't exactly comfortable with
Mhm.
them still being connected, she becomes more comfortable with it. And she opens herself up to that connection as well. Like it's a two-way street there. They both have to open themselves up. So they start connecting more, understanding each other a lot better. And one of the ways that they really start to do that is when Clem sees Sarah talking with Bahil, her little brother,
Mhm.
Bibi, as he's called in the story. Clem sees how Sarah talks to her little brother and how she really cares for him. And she's like, oh, this is a person who loves other people. I should probably be nicer.
Well, for those of us who are watching live, those who are watching live and those who are going to catch this by replay, we are here on the far side talking with Avery Carter about this great, great fantasy work, The Ghost and the Real Girl, which is book one in the Caelum series. Um, and you get a sense, of course, of time, of history, um, fantasy. So, what drew you to this genre versus, mystery, sci-fi, romance, all that kind of stuff?
Uh, I grew up reading Tamara Pierce. Yeah, Tamara Pierce was one of my, pretty much a core foundation
Mm-hmm.
of how I developed my writing style. Tamara Pierce, Chronicles of Narnia,
Mm-hmm.
and Harry Potter, like every other millennial, though that one hasn't quite aged as well as the others. But Tammy and her Circle of Magic, her Tortall books, like those were very key players in how I developed my writing style
Mm-hmm.
and my writing genre. And to me, fantasy, it's a playground. I can do pretty much whatever I want in there. You know, do I want to have living, moving moss creature? Yes, I can do that. That's great. And I don't have to necessarily justify it with anything scientific. Not to say that I wouldn't do that,
Mm-hmm.
because I do have a few sci-fi books that are like way on the back burner. I do have a few sci-fi books planned when I have the time to
Mm-hmm.
actually go and write them. But fantasy is just something I understand very well, and I love it very much. It's very close to my heart.
So when you set off to write, this particular series, um, did you know that it was going to be, more than one book, that you knew that this was going to, you started this story and you knew that it would have to be a series? and what led you to, what was the key factor in determining that, what the story can't be done in just one book?
I actually didn't know it was going to be more than one chapter when I first started writing it. I thought it was going to be a short story.
Okay.
And then it kept building from there. And I remember one day sitting down by my wife and being like, love, this story is bigger than a short story, but I need to know, like, I need some help with world building. And to her credit, she sat down and just talked the whole thing through with me, asked me some great questions on like what I wanted the city to be outlaid like, and made like a really crappy little Microsoft Paint drawing of it that eventually became like the foundation for the map in the book itself.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I only intended it on being the one story.
Mm-hmm.
And then the feedback that I consistently got from everyone was, this is a really cool world. I want to read more. I want to know more about this world because this is really cool. And I didn't feel like I had any more stories in there to tell until writer brain took over. And suddenly now I have The Stone Sings True, which is a story about the daughter of copper miners who finds out she can sing stone up and sing minerals up from underneath the earth. It's actually available for pre-order right now on Amazon. She can sing stones up from underneath the earth, and she ends up having to go and rescue her father when he's trapped underneath a mountain because of a landslide. So there's that. I have a story in that universe about a boy who was going to become a priest, but something happens with him in fire, and then there's like a pirate who's really good with wind. Just a lot of things as magic starts to bloom back into the world as a result of the events of The Ghost and the Real Girl.
Okay, so
lots of stories.
So there are more stories. So that means there are definitely more characters. Your readers will see more characters, take the platform, so to speak. A lot of times in series, you see characters move in and fade out from book to book as characters and new plot twists develop and new storylines are introduced. So, I mean, how do you maintain kind of a consistency with stories within a series, and as well as how with character development as you maintain connections, readers with readers who've kind of who are following your series?
So one of the ways that I usually handle keeping characters consistent is I make playlists for each of my books. And I have songs for those characters. And the songs change as the characters evolve. I'm autistic, and a lot of my understanding of the world and of characters and of stories is through music and connecting it to different songs. So as the characters develop, the songs that are connected to them also develop and change. So whatever frame of mind I'm in when I'm listening to their character songs, that is pretty much how I keep their character consistent. As for world building details, my wife keeps me on track with that. She's really good at just like making sure that I stay consistent between the beginning of the story to the end of the story. She actually loves doing that. One of our favorite things to do when we watch movies is just like point out plot holes as we see them. So she keeps me on track with that. And Yeah. As for, keeping the characters like moving in and out, ideally they would eventually all come together as like sort of an X-Men style thing where it's like, yes, we bring all of these people together. We did it. Magic is back. Now we have to find out why it left. So
Okay, so there's like this web of connection that you're able to, maintain and kind of, it spreads out, you know, and
almost like a
you build,
mycelial network.
yeah, yeah, just like that, and see it grow and enlarge,
Mm-hmm.
So um, what do you see as, do you have a set number in this particular series in mind?
Not really. Usually when I'm coming up with book series, it has a set number, like the Moon
Mhm.
Trilogy, 3 books.
Right.
The Colores duology is going to be 2 books. Spellbound is going to be 1 book. When I'm doing the Dream Cartographer, that's going to be 4 books. And like, with Caelum, I'm just kind of like, however many books it gives me. They're fairly short, they're novella length, so however many books my brain decides to give me for that one, if it keeps giving me more, cool. If not, that's also okay. I'd be happy with wrapping it up at 4 or 5 books, but it depends on if my brain decides to give me any more stories.
Well, I think as a reader and having, I'm close to the end of this one. Um, I believe there are definitely more stories in this series, and I look forward to it. What is one thing that you hope that readers will take away from this particular story?
So, this particular story, what do I want readers to take away from it? At the risk of sounding like every other fantasy author out there, magic can be found in the most unexpected of places. The most unexpected. So, touch some moss, see if it wakes up.
It's like,
And
okay,
also,
if we're out on a nature walk today, I'll be thinking about that.
touch some moss, see if it wakes up. And since you're not at the end of the book yet, the joke that I made about the mycelial network won't exactly hit until you get to the last chapter.
Okay, all right. So I've got this. I've got this today. It's happening today. It's happening today. We gotta get. It's because I gotta get to. Like, I gotta get to the joke. I gotta understand the punchline, right? So,
Yeah.
so what is something that you've learned about yourself as an author through this process, this writing process, this journey of series and trilogies and duologies and um, just fantasy writing? What's something that you've learned about yourself as a writer?
If you're going to say that you're going to release a book at the end of a month, make sure that you have most of it written before you set the release date.
All right, so as aspiring writers, take that as a golden nugget. Take that as author nugget, aspiring writer nugget. Take it as a pin it as a point of reference. How can our viewers follow you, connect to your work, and you know, purchase your work and all that good stuff?
So, my books are available on Amazon exclusively at the moment. I have not managed to port them to any other platforms, but they are available on Amazon. You can connect with me on Twitter if Twitter is still alive. I know that it's kind of like in its death throes at the moment. But Avery Carter Lit on Twitter. You can check me out on Tumblr at Characters on Strike, which is my nickname for writer's block. You can see my Instagram, which is My Graceless Heart. And you can also check out my website, which is avery-carter.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Avery Carter, for spending time with us this afternoon. We definitely wish you continued success with The Ghost and the Real Girl and
Thank
all
you.
the wonderful projects to come. This has been great.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, for those who are watching us live and those who will catch us again by replay, make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate Read a New Book Month during the month of December. The month is not over. So, why not pick up a new book? Let that book be The Ghost and the Real Girl. Or you can just connect to Avery Carter on all of her social media platforms and find out the latest and greatest that she's got available for your reading pleasure and enjoyment. So until next
I'm so
time.
sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Monica.
Go
My
ahead.
pronouns are actually they, them.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Avery, for being with us. And so, Avery, and so make sure you're staying in tune. For to the Farside Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate Read a New Book Month during the month of December. Make sure you're picking up and following our guest author on all her social media platforms, so you all of they them social media
There.
platforms.
Yeah. Sorry.
so that you can follow all social media platforms so that you're connected to their work and you can follow them and with all of the books and everything that they've got coming out. So thank you for watching us live. Thank you for catching us on the replay. Thank you, Avery, for spending this time with us. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed and have a great and wonderful day.